What is up, Honey Badger Nation? Welcome to another episode of Expert Mentors Live. We've got one of the OG Honey Badger with us, Mr. Andrew Gaydosh. How you doing, brother?
What's up, Kitch? How are you, man?
Doing good, man. Good to have you back on. I know you've been a frequent guest of the show and always adding tons of value. In fact, I think one of yours was one of the most watched one of the years, but I know yours gets referenced a lot because of kind of your whole neighborhood mayor concept and really what you've been able to do in multiple markets and just taking absolute domination, not even like close, but just absolute market domination. And, you know, me working with so many agents over the years, just every time anybody wants to get into a geo strategy or just how do you kind of position yourself, I'm like, well, might as well learn from the best. So it's always, getting all of your information and then getting them over to your Facebook group, the Neighborhood Mayor Facebook group. And, for everybody listening in, make sure that you guys connect with Andrew, get into the Neighborhood Mayor Facebook group and really start to plug in because, really the Jay-Z, right? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And the numbers tell the truth of how you've been able to strategically dominate and not only, dominate, market presence, but also get in and secure listings. And I think that's kind of the hot topic in the button moving into this kind of season of the market in the season of real estate. It's still about getting those listings.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's Kinder 101, attract, not chase. And, for us, here every year, and I think you're still coaching. John's still my coach. So, I have these conversations with him offline all the time. And, for the last month or so, things have been a little bit slow with the listings. And I wish, and I don't know why I don't do this, I'm going to have to start doing it, is to basically have a diary and every night, just kind of, how do I feel my business is going today? And I'm sure there's some added value from personal side of that too, but from the business side, how am I feeling today? Because, after January 1, a lot of times we all feel a lot of anxiety. We're watching Facebook where everybody else is doing all this stuff. And, hell, I'm looking at some of the guys and gals that I know even on my team, and it looks like they're just crushing it, and they are, but yet I'm having conversations with them and they're feeling the same way that a lot of others are. And that's the same thing. They wake up, they get on Facebook, they see all these wonderful things that are happening for everybody else, but those are just the wins. They're not showcasing the losses. And so getting back to that diary, if I could just try to chronicleize, how I feel every day, I would know that, hey, don't stress out because it's coming. And here it is this week, starting to get those calls we've had in our meeting today, which is another thing that most of you guys, if you guys have a team, you're not having your weekly routines and your rhythm of your team meetings and things like that, get with Johnny and he can help you out. But we're in our meeting today and I had 2 calls. Amy got one and our ISA, and I got one for within one in each of our neighborhoods, which is great. That's what you want. You want those calls to call you. Hey, Andrew, I'm interested now. Let's talk. I see your signs everywhere. I see you everywhere. I see you on the social media. I get the postcards. There's always a different reason why they're calling, but it's just, land air, shock and awe type of mentality. And yet they know us because even though I might not know them, through the relationship that I've built with them just on the social media channels and the events and the postcards and things like that, they know me. And so they're going to call me when they think of at least giving me an at-bat to list their home.
Yeah. It's number of impressions on the marketplace. I've got a young kid, man. I can't wait for you to meet him. He's out of New York. And, his average sales price, $2.5 million, young kid. And, he's just been ground and pound. Postcards, handwritten notes, door knocking, knowing the area, becoming a student, knowing what's going on, what it sells for, who, studying the who's are in there, and really just, really being that knowing all, right, presence of kind of what you're talking about. But for everybody kind of listening in, Andrew, I don't want to, I want to, get back to kind of the topic, but I think it's really helpful if you kind of share the story, for you, how it started, right? Because I think this is, we got to be really careful. And it's the whole gap and gain concept, is that the second we start comparing ourselves to others is when we fall into the gap instead of realizing the progress we're really making and understanding, what you've been able to do at Lockengren hasn't always been that way. It's been a progression that's built over many, many years to be able to get to the point it is. But I think it'd be really helpful, for agents listening in. They're like, okay, I've had my bucket out for the last couple of years, and I've been very fortunate because because everybody that knew that everybody was making a move over the last few years, everybody was buying and selling. Right. And so if you just had a sign saying, hey, I'm a real estate agent, and they liked you, they were probably going to call you. Well, it's back to the days where that doesn't work. And so if agents are like, hey, I've got this area, I kind of really want to focus on it. Can you give them kind of the basic foundation of where to start and not try to immediately get to where you're at? I think that would be really helpful, so people understand and they don't fall into that comparing themselves into that rut.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a challenge. And so a little bit of history. So we're located in Dayton, Ohio. I've not always been in Dayton, but that's my main office. I operate a team. There's about 15 of us now, kind of maybe 10 in Dayton, 5 in the Preble County area where this lake is located, where John's referencing Lake Lockengren. And what happened was I essentially moved to this lake community. I was waiting for my wife to graduate from school. I was young. I just graduated from college. She was still there. And, we were planning on getting married in a couple of years, but hey, we're moving south. And here this lake was there, and I'm a water rat. So I went ahead and bought a place. I was fortunate, had a landscaping business. And long story short, I was fortunate enough to get a place there. But I spent all my money getting on the water and, orange countertops, the whole deal. Was a 70s kind of home. So the first day, just to give you kind of a quick little background, I mean, I knew nobody in this neighborhood. I was actually working in Indiana at the time. So this is actually another state, even though it was 20 minutes away from where I was working in Indiana. And my buddies came, they left, we moved my few pieces of furniture in, and they took off, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to take a boat ride. So went out on this boat that I don't know how it was even navigable. Like, it got me out on the lake. I shouldn't have been running it, but it was all I had. The guy I bought the house from left it for me. Yeah. And I get to the middle of the lake, and it's like almost 11 o'clock at night. And a lot of you that know me know I'm pretty social. So I just kind of rolled up to this flotilla, and there was about 12, 13, maybe 14 boats tied up. And I'm like, hey, I'm Andrew. What's up? I'm a new guy in the neighborhood. They all looked at me like I was an alien, but they're like, come on over. They called me college boy. That's what started the whole program. And we had some cocktails, and I was like, hey, you guys should come over tomorrow to the house. I'll grill out some burgers. And, that's what started it, unbeknownst to me, because I wasn't even working in that neighborhood yet. I had a RE/MAX franchise in Indiana. So I had my Ohio license, but it wasn't a focus point. That in and of itself was probably the biggest precursor, the ignition for my neighborhood mayor program in Lake Lockengren, because the next day, guess what? All these people showed up. I didn't think they were. In fact, halftime, I think I told you at one point in the morning, I forgot I even invited them. Yeah. So rolling in, they're coming by the dock saying, hey, I'm coming over later. What time are you grilling out? I'm like, oh shit, I gotta get some stuff. So what we started doing was, I recognized the value of getting a lot of people together very quickly. And we always talk about collapsing time. If you guys know John Kitchen, it was always about, how do we collapse time? How do we get to the goal quicker? And that was a way for me to meet a lot of people in one short period of time, and then meet their friends and their friends. So within that, I started kind of doing a little bit of this, kind of naturally socializing. And I was like, man, I need to start selling real estate over here. This is a great place. I know I'm going to be here a few years, but let's get after it. So I used that as the basis of launching this neighborhood mayor program. And it essentially was about events. We did events at the house, and they weren't anything crazy. I mean, people might see what we're doing now and go, oh my gosh, like you said, comparing yourself to somebody else, you can't do that. I mean, our first events were, they were just, hey, bring some hamburgers and hot dogs over and a case of beer and let's hang out. And it started to evolve. And then I'm like, hey, maybe we should buy some t-shirts. Well, maybe I'll get my lender to pay half the t-shirts with me, and we'll make sure everybody that comes over knows that I sell real estate. And then it was a matter of identifying that area and saying, okay, who can I help in this community? How can I make a deposit in their lives? All the different clubs, the HOA, the firefighters, the security people, everybody, what can we do for them? Started making these small deposits in their lives, whether it be, buying them, pies at, Thanksgiving, or t-shirts, or fireworks shows, or whatever in the backyard. It was all very grassroots. And that's really how it started. And then over time, we just kept seeing what worked, what didn't work. We kept iterating it, and just it kind of grew into this neighborhood mayor program now that is got 3 levels to it. You've got your mayor candidate, which is what most of you guys would want to do when you're starting out in a neighborhood. That's when you don't have a big market share, less than 10%. You're going in, you're doing, the stuff that doesn't cost a lot. You're walking the neighborhood, you're talking to people, you're, things that it's heavy on the investment of your energy and labor, of your time. And then, as your business grows, we've got another track that's your first term mayor, which is a little bit more, you can spend a little bit more money. It's a little bit more elaborate. And then your incumbent mayor program is what we're doing now, which is, I've got Liz to help me. She coordinates the events. We're pretty much, shock and awe
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how we did it, and that's kind of how we're doing it. And now we've actually expanded it, and we've basically replicated that into another market. We learned some tough lessons, which we can talk about. But yeah, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that, John, so far.
Yeah, I do. I think just starting out and getting out there and being seen, being known, right? Being visible in the community, being visible in the area, and not trying to be that secret agent, and really getting out and building those relationships. Like you said, small, it's even just come over to the house and we can grill out, right? And just making deposits into those relationships. And, in times of uncertainty, right? The whole lost, confused, insecure of kind of where I'm at, what I should be doing. They're looking for certainty. They're looking for, a direction. And that's where, being consistent inside of there is key. And, I remember, you telling the story, like even your first event, the thing you gave away was t-shirts, like just the simplicity of swag and t-shirts to get that going. And then it builds from there. But I think it's just really the whole thing of staying consistent, doing the things you can do until you can graduate to that next level, and then to that next level and progress. I mean, how many years did you go without even having, you managed the events for years.
Yeah, 10 years, maybe.
Yeah. At least before, bringing somebody in.
Right. And I'm still the guy there during the setup. I might not be doing all the setup, but I'm still there orchestrating some of it for the most part. And as you know, John, at the Dublin pub last year, I was cutting down lights at 11 o'clock at night. So, you can't not be involved. And the minute you take your eyes off of it, or people see you as being this person that's not involved in the community, you're losing it. And a lot of times I'm doing that specifically so people can see me, that I'm rolling my sleeves up and I'm part of it.
Yeah. It makes a big deal. And once we knew we had something there, right? Complete domination. Give them an idea of, you can share some of the statistics. You had 100% market share of every transaction that happened on the water. You controlled at least.
Correct. Yeah. So for almost 10 years in a neighborhood of 1,500 homes, we had 100% participation in the one end of the deal on the waterfront for a long time. And we still have probably 95%. Occasionally there'll be a random one that pops in, but it's nuts. And then off the water, we're about 65% of the transactions off the water.
So think about that, guys. And, when you get to that third level to where Andrew's at, there's a whole nother strategy to where you can just, dominate to flush anybody out that's trying to come in. So there's different levels and different layers to it, but you just got to identify an area that has a great turnover, that has an above average sales price, that there's not an Andrew Gaydosh in that you can go play in. I think that's just the simple, if you just want a quick Cliff Note version of a neighborhood, that's kind of the criteria you're looking for.
You're absolutely right. And then, the other thing I want to mention, because I've had a lot of experience now in coaching my guys, and, as I'm with the EXP organization. So I have a couple hundred people in my downline that, we help them as well. And it's interesting to see, what works, what doesn't work. Everybody says they want to do this, but do they really have the chops to do it? It's kind of like you with racing, I want to do a 100-mile race, but you get through the first day of training, you're like, no, I don't want to do that anymore.
Oh, good.
how many people actually make it? So I guess where I'm going with that is that if you do want to embark on a neighborhood mayor type of program like we do, you have to be willing to be with the people. I mean, that's the thing. You gotta be involved. And if you're not, it's like playing sports. You got to do the reps. You can't just show up during practice. You got to be like Kobe and being in there an hour before practice and an hour after practice. And that's what's going to separate you from, being average. And because there's a lot of average agents out there. So,
yeah, you and I were talking about this earlier, and it's one of the things that I've seen, and I know, you work with so many agents as well, and it's getting back into the amount of effort that it takes now to equal a result, right? Like, it's like, you've got to know your numbers. You've got to know, even to the point of, okay, well, how many dials does it take to have a conversation, and how many conversations do I need to have that leads to a sell? And then, there's the appointments in between, but really then you can trace it back. Okay, X number of conversations should equal X number of sales. And I'm just seeing a lot of agents that they're coming in and they're doing a little bit of work, but they're not getting to where they need to have enough of the conversations that's going to lead to the amount of business. And, to me, that's kind of a trap to fall into. And so for you, for what you see in yourself and coaching your agents, like, what are some of the things mindset wise and then behavior wise that you're really trying to really ingrain and instill them to make sure they're taking enough of the right action?
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've really gotten pretty aware of the personality. I mean, it's kind of like what you do the first time you have a coaching client. Like, let's figure out who these people are, what they want to do, what their interests are. You can take a person that does a lot of business and you could say, okay, now do you want to do internet leads, or do you want to, work on Facebook ads and throw them in your KV core? And everybody's like, yeah, that's a great idea. But that's the type of person that might not be as well suited to be disciplined to do the same things every day over and over, because that's what it's going to take to be successful in that specific way to get business. They may be better off joining, some type of social organization where they can get business that way, because that's going to be a natural, it's not going to suck the energy from them. So I've been better at that, trying to kind of help people kind of find their own way. But for the consistency of what you're talking about, it's your average, day. What's your ideal day? What do you do? What are your habits every day that works? When it's a good day, when it's a rainy day, when it's a sunny day, when you're feeling good, when you're feeling bad, what are you doing on a daily basis? And if you showed me your schedule, I'll show you how successful you're going to be this year. And it's the fundamentals. And I think of a couple of the guys right now that we have on the team. We have Spencer Marshall, who, Spencer, I've heard him talk about Spencer a lot. He his senior year at Ohio State. Now he's living on campus, which is an hour and a half away.
Great story. This is such a good story.
He joined us as a sophomore in college. So he did really well as a junior in college. His senior year, he made $225,000 selling real estate, going to school an hour and a half away from Dayton, Ohio. And he sold real estate in Dayton, Ohio, because he grinded. I mean, he did everything we asked him to do. Hey, Spence, these are your opportunities. Let's get in your KV core. Let's do this. Let's, every day you got to do this. And he would do that. And then I'd be like, Spence, why weren't you at the meeting today? He's like, oh, I had a final. And I'm like, I totally forgot you're even in college still. I mean, it was bizarre. And to this day, he's still grinding it. So I think that you have to have the mentality that if you're not going to have the habits to be successful, and you're not willing to do the work to be successful, knowing that it's not immediate gratification. I mean, the neighborhood mayor program is a long-term burn. Yeah, you can get some at-bats right away. You can get lucky, and you're going to have better chance to get at-bats right away while you do it. But the real benefit of it is a year, 2, 3 years down the road. And we saw that when we tried to scale from Lockengren to Yankee Trace. Yeah. I mean, I was taking Yankee Trace is 45 minutes away or to an hour away from Lockengren, and moving to Dayton. And, we tried to do the same things that we did in Lockengren, but in Yankee, but without the physical presence. We did all the fluff, all the easier stuff, the postcards, even some of the events. But really, it didn't really work as well as I would have liked to it until I rolled my sleeves up and I was like, okay, I can't half-ass it. I gotta do my two-a-days, and no one's watching me right now. I got to do it. No one's right on top of me. So that's where you get better. And I think once we immersed ourselves in that community, and, still to this day, when I'm driving down the street, I see a for sale owner. Guess what? I'm going back, pulling it up. I'm looking who they are. I'm going on Facebook to see if we've had any conversations. Do they know us? Have they ingested any of our material? How can I angle my way in to have a conversation with them? I go back, I update my database, I tag them properly, I do all that stuff. No one can really do that but you, or unless you have people that are in your environment that are doing that for you, that are pretty right on top of you.
Yeah. And, I remember, starting to, hey, should we do this? Should we move our, way in here to Yankee Trace? And, even at the time, there was a strong presence through, other outlets like radio and television that was in, direct, going to be head-to-head direct competition inside of the market. Yet, you were able to go in and make that market penetration through, like you said, rolling your sleeves up, being strategic within the neighborhood, doing certain events within the neighborhood to create those collisions and create, the conversations, and continuing to nurture in on the relationship. However, like you said, it takes time. And so it's not one of these, hey, I need to make my cash register ring immediately. This is something that you're building for the future. However, if you stay consistent with it and nurture those relationships, and it's no different than getting into the business. This I always kind of share with people and newer agents, and I know you do as well, is that getting into the business, this is why I always say, get on a team. If you're brand new, get on a team, because the team's going to give you support. They're going to give you, possibly most teams are going to give you some form of opportunities in leads, or they're going to, something will be there opportunity wise. Even in their brand recognition, there's going to be people coming in. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to just do the handful of things that matter in this business. And I think we're newer agents, especially as they get all of these other things going on the back of the house when they should be focused on the front. Right. And so being able to have that, I think is key. But, when you get 3, 4, 5 years in the business, and I'm seeing, a lot of agents right now that are at that point, the referral business is just coming at them. And that's where the shift kind of happens. But up until that point, what are you doing to generate, those new opportunities and those new relationships? And so it takes time. Looking at, understanding that, but getting in and like, what are you coaching your team and your guys, gals through right now, especially since it's still a game of supply and demand, and the supply is not there. What are you like emphasizing on yourself, your team, to where we can keep this listing generation machine going?
We had the same conversation earlier today at our meeting, and it's pretty consistent. It's all about our database, managing our database and being able to communicate to our database. And the challenge with that for new agents is they don't really have their database to fall back on. That's their sphere of influence. So the first thing we ask our agents to do when they come and join our team is, okay, if you're going to get married today, how many people could you invite? Who would you invite to your wedding? And let's say that you had 200 people you could invite. Who are those people? And then we get them, then we load them into the database. And then the next question is, okay, let's talk about all the service providers you use. Where do you get your haircut? Who manages, who's your doctor? Who does your car service? There's a whole nother list of people that you have interactions with that you don't even know about. Okay, they need to go in your database. So naturally, then it's like, okay, let's go through your phone. Let's go through your social media. You have to get your database up to speed, and you have to be able to have somebody to communicate. It's like the 3 pillars of the neighborhood mayor deal is you have to have one is you have to have an audience, right? And that's the people in your database. You have to have a media format, like a way to communicate with them. And, that typically is like a private Facebook group or your email or your text message or however you're getting across. And then the third thing is you need content. So we practice. Okay, who are we talking to today? Who are our people? I actually literally have a t-shirt that says, who are your people? And I wear that around the office and they make fun of me because I want to know who their people are. And then how are we going to talk to those people? We have lots of different ways to do it. But, if they're in your database, we basically can shoot a little bomb video on your phone, upload it, email it, send it that way. The email open rates are a lot better when they're a video show, showing there as opposed to text. So there's a lot of ways to do it. But I guess to answer your question is, we have to communicate the content that we want to communicate to them, but you can't communicate that unless you don't have the people in your database. So manage your database. And then once you have it, how are we going? What's the message? The message right now is, guys, don't wait. It's springtime, give it another month. Every other person in the world is going to list their home. So if you're talking to your database, how do you communicate to them that the tulips aren't out yet? And that's when that's when they think their house is going to sell the best. Yeah. How are we going to educate them that doesn't matter if the tulips aren't out yet? We need to get it on the market today when there's a third of the inventory on the market, and you are the one and only when somebody needs to move. You're going to get a premium for that. So the message, that's the content. How are you better than everybody else? What's your game plan? Chris calls it, or Jason calls it the battle plan. If you're talking to your buyers, come talk to me. I've got a battle plan that's going to help you get your offer accepted. Do you have, appraisal gap waivers? Do you have, insurance waiver or the inspection waivers, all the kind of tactics that we need? And we call it our home buying strategy. So we get them into the office. How do we get them in there and show them how we're different, how we can get their offer accepted than over anybody else? So that's the message. But you still have to, you can't talk to people to an empty room.
Right.
You talk about your database, and all these gurus are out there saying, hey, manage your database. They're not lying. I mean, that's the lifeblood of your business. And if you're not managing that, you don't have a business. And right. I hate to say it, but for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been taking orders. And you know this as well as I do. I mean, some of the Zillow stuff, we've got agents in our organization that live off Zillow, and that's great. I think that's awesome. If it's working for them, that's awesome. But what happens when the quality of the lead changes and you're almost like Forrest Gump, you're flying through the wind because you don't actually have the ability to generate more or take your foot off the throttle or whatever. If you're in an environment where you're waiting for somebody to give you something, at least when you've got your own database and you've got your own plan and you're communicating to them, you have the ability to throttle forward and drum up some business if you need to. You just got to get in there and roll your sleeves up.
No, there's a lot there I want to touch on, because I think it's really, you're so spot on. And I think the beginning thing is, like you said, figuring out who that audience could be. And it's one of those things that you don't stop iterating on until you find a couple great sources to where you can consistently, predictably bring in, some opportunities. And that's really what you guys are looking for, right? New agent, you want to get 10 to 12, 15 deals under your belt. They're all going to be probably a little bit different, but then you got to be thinking through, okay, what am I doing to consistently bring in opportunities? And like you said, get into the database. And this is, people I think get too tripped up on the details there. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Do you still use Agent 2000?
I run it in tandem with 2 others. Yeah. Matter of fact,
how long have you had that?
I can show you right. 25 years.
Same database, guys. 25 years. It doesn't matter. Like, don't get caught up. Oh, I need this. I need that. No, you don't. Like, you can actually, honestly, it could be an Excel spreadsheet. I always, on the agent attraction side of things, Kinder got to over 5,000 in his organization. You know what his database was? An Excel spreadsheet. He built 5,000 agents in his downline off of an Excel spreadsheet. So don't get tripped up on, well, I need this fancy CRM. I need this automation. No, you don't. And I always laugh because Agent 2000, you're still using Agent 2000.
Yeah. What's great about, you need a phone number, you need an email address, and you know who the hell they are. And that's all you need. Naturally we downloaded all that data from Agent 2000 into Follow Up Boss and KV Core. So we're kind of running most of our things through there. But personally, I've got so much of the stuff that didn't translate back that, when you go from one CRM to another, not everything translates. So we kind of maintain that and keep massaging it a little bit. But you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter. I wanted to say one other thing there is, don't be afraid to really niche your people, meaning go deep. I mean, don't go wide, go deep into whatever you're into. I have one of my guys in our downline. He was struggling. He's like, Andrew, I tried the neighborhood thing and it's not working for me. I'm not that social anyways. I'm like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you like to do? He's like, well, I love to golf. And I'm like, well, first of all, he said some other things. I'm like, no, I mean, like, what do you really want to do? I told you it's you have the day off. What are you going to do? He's like, I want to go play golf. I'm like, all right. So how often do you play golf? Well, we play on Thursday nights. I got like 10, 15 of us to get together. I'm like, bingo, those are your people. Okay. So now let's talk about how are we going to create you into that environment and grow it. So now he's up to like 60 people. He does his own little golf thing on Thursday nights. He buys them a couple rounds of drinks. He has the lenders come in and they'll meet for a half hour social before they go out, and they'll meet up at the clubhouse afterwards. But he'll give them a t-shirt or whatever. He lets them know that he's a realtor. He's not jamming it down the throat, but he's basically immersed himself into that. And he's been getting deal after deal after deal from that group of people, and people that he didn't even know before that have joined because a friend likes to golf and like they bring them into their league for some more. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It doesn't really matter what you do, but go deep, niche into it, and don't have any excuses or don't be scared to say, oh, I'm a lock and grip real estate expert. The fear was, and everybody told me, including my broker, oh, you're going to alienate everybody else. Well, I don't care. As long as I can get all the business out of here and the people outside of Lock and Grin, I'm not going to tell them I'm a Lock and Grin expert. Right. I'm doing something else for them, right? And so yeah, it's crazy how that works out.
It is. And I know you have like you try to instill like the 3-leg strategy, right? For each and every person, at least 3 stable legs, right? You think about a 2-legged stool, right? It's not going to be as sturdy, but you've got that third. And I know, one has to be that database, right? Has to be the database. You're constantly getting, new opportunities in there. I think one of your legs, it doesn't necessarily have to be a geo farm area, but definitely start getting into those niches, like you said, in that of the interest levels that you can just, it's natural for you to come out. And I know you're talking deep, just swarm all over it. And I think that's the problem that a lot of real estate agents is they dabble everywhere instead of just going deep as they possibly can on a specific area. So we're starting to get kind of our area. We've got the database, and then you talked about a little bit about the audience, and then if you get into Russell Brunson's concept of hook, story, offer, and that's what you were kind of talking about there was, okay, well, what's the hook to get people's attention? Yeah. And for right now, you said the hook is don't wait. Right. So getting that out there, and then that's an example of a hook, and getting that out there. Hey, don't wait. But then you got to be able to back it up with some stories and leverage the stories. Even if you don't have the stories, you can borrow stories from other people. And so, like, what are some of the stories that you're instilling into your team to have the conversations with the buyers and sellers that they're having right now?
That's funny. You must have been listening to our meeting today, right on our Zoom. And if anybody ever wants to join in on our meetings, we Zoom out. So we have a ton of people on there. I don't even know who's on the call half the time, but it's so funny. We just had the same conversation today. Is the best insurance salesperson is a life insurance salesperson is one that has a story, a story that resonates, that maybe he lost a friend at 30 years old that had a family. He didn't have life insurance, so it meant a lot to him. He owes it to share that story with everybody, to help everybody not be in the same position as friends in. For us, the story I shared today was that if you look at the numbers, we literally are 5% over where we were a year ago in terms of pricing. Now, that's not a big deal in a lot of huge markets, but if you're talking a $300,000 home, for example, in Dayton, Ohio, that means that it's $15,000 more today than it was this time last year. And at this time last year is when the interest rates started to go from under 4 to where they are now. So we've got a lot of people that were in March of last year that said, hey, I'm going to wait till these interest rates come down. So here they are. They've now waited a year. They've got to pay an extra 15 grand for a house. And that interest payment might have cost them an extra $100 a month, maybe. So they would have maybe 1,200 more at the same rate, but they can never go back and buy it at a lesser price unless the market crashes, but they can always refinance it. So the story is that we share is that just exactly like that. If you have a story where you have a buyer and they're now looking at it going, oh my gosh, I'm totally upside down, I could have bought this before, share that story with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunities of, the time will correct most of our problems in real estate, because even in the worst markets, we've crashed and we've gone back up. I mean, it's just like the stock market. If you look at it over the last 100 years, how much growth we've had. So let's say you're paying an extra 10 grand, but you get the house you want. Your wife's pregnant. You need the third bedroom. Yeah, you don't want to spend an extra 10 grand, but buy the damn house so that you're not paying an extra 15 grand for it a year ago and you're getting divorced because you're on top of each other in the old house. I mean,
need that space.
Because no one's going to give to,
Right.
in 3 years, because it's going to be worth, a hell of a lot more than 10 grand more. So have those conversations and be smart. I think we talked about this a little bit, John, is you have to be an expert. So you have to know the market. You have to know your numbers. Where is it at? You have to have that elevator pitch when you talk to somebody. You have to be trusted too. So you got to be ethical. You got to do the right business, and you've had to make some deposits in their lives, whether you created content for them to take in over online, or let's say you're in a neighborhood where you're sponsoring events or helping out, you're giving them a t-shirt or a cooler or whatever. You need those 3 things for them to think about you, I think, pretty much. And you can easily do that. It just depends on what you want to do.
Yeah. And so to kind of button that up before I hit you with another thought, that how you're helping your agents and your team move through this market. So, we've got that, hey, don't wait. We've got the stories, and remember, it don't have to be your stories. They can be, you can borrow them and share them. And hey, I was on our team meeting today, and the theme was around talking about how, talking with buyers and sellers and why you don't want to wait. And this was some examples, right? You can borrow and share stories, but where do you get them to help them move into the call to action? And I think that's where a lot of, what are you doing to help them to say, hey, are you ready to move forward? Like, what is the call to action? Hey man, if you were drowning and I threw you a life preserver, would you grab it? Yes. Great. You ready to take the next step? Like something, like, what are you helping them to start to make the ask?
Yeah, it's a tough call. Like when we're talking to, and I assume you're asking how we helping our agents with this.
Yes.
I think it's just having the ability. It's like Brian Moses. I mean, you sit around with Brian Moses, you listen to enough calls of his talking to his clients, and it starts coming out in maybe a different way, but you'll be on the phone with your client and you say something and you're like amazed that you said it. You're like, oh my God, that sounded like Brian, right? It's through repetition. We have jam sessions on Fridays where we all come in and we all sit around the ping pong table, and there's usually 15 of us, and we'll be hammering out the calls. And you literally will learn. And then when somebody has a successful call, we all stop. Okay, man, that was great. You could have done this. Oh yeah, you could have said that. Oh man, that's awesome. And then you just kind of keep getting better and better with that. And I think that helps when you're around others that are doing it. There are plenty of places in the world, I think, that you can do role play with people all over the country when you're learning your scripts and all that. So I guess the short answer is understand your scripts, your dialogues, and don't be afraid to ask for it. And remember that buyers and sellers need to be told what to do a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to. And if they don't want it, they'll push back, but they need to know it's okay to spend an extra 10 grand. I know that the house across the street sold for 10,000 less, 2 months ago, but that was a different time. It's okay, Mr. Buyer. And let me tell you the story why it's okay. And, I'm a big fan of the Columbo close. I'm always, hey, I'll go in, we'll do the deal. Then as I'm literally hanging up the phone, it's like, oh, by the way, have you thought about this? Their guards down, you're throwing it out there. It's not real high pressure. And usually I can catch them on that Columbo close at the end as well.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think, you nailed it. People are just waiting to be told what to do. I think that works in, working with buyers and sellers. It works if we're trying to increase our headcount and talk to other agents about joining our organization, joining our teams. they're just waiting to be told what to do. That's really where they're at, right? If you hook them in, you got a great story that aligns to solve their problem, and you've got a real solution that they believe that you can be beneficial and help them. They're just waiting for you to tell them what the next step is.
Right.
And so it's just really important not to forget that. The thought there to, how are you coaching and keeping your team engaged and keeping their confidence level at a level to where they don't go the opposite direction and become paralyzed with fear? A little bit of fight or flight kind of kicks in from a survival standpoint. How are you helping them kind of work through that confidence gap, especially, agents that have not spent a lot of time on the listing side, or all of a sudden throw up that story, I don't like listings. And it's like, okay, how do you kind of coach them through that and help regain their confidence and belief in themselves when working with listings?
So as it relates to listings, I think, first of all, we really try to systematize how they do it, what they do. So I'm like, that's really, really a big deal. The certified home selling system for us, like we use it to the T. And anybody on our team knows exactly what I would do first thing I do when I walk in a home. Where do we go? The things I say, because, I'll go with them on listing appointments. They go with me, Jason, Chris, the rest of them, we all kind of share that brain as it comes to what the process is. So I think the first thing is, being nervous is when you're typically not prepared really well. Now you can still be nervous when you're prepared, but that's more of an excitement. But I think just going through the process of understanding how to do it once you get there and why it's so important, and then the things that you need to say. So we've got that down pretty good. And that's basically that's you, Kitch. I mean, that's the NAEA, you and Kender building that thing out. And we've just we just follow it. I was never the smartest kid in school, but I always sat next to one. I'm Jay Kender 101, right?
Yeah.
So once they get there, that's not really a big issue for our team because they're pretty prepared. We make them go through the certified home seller system certification and all that. I think the confidence to get the listing, that might be the biggest challenge that we're looking at. And I think it's just a matter of grinding it out and understanding as a first year agent, the opportunity to list homes isn't going to be as great as after you planted your seeds, as what we call it. When you sell a home, you basically planted your listing seed for 3 to 5 years down the road. So you have to understand as a buyer, the way you're going to get listings is to sell more houses so that you can then turn around and list those homes when those people are ready to sell. For sub owners, expired listings. We had a really good conversation with Amy today about how she's starting to see a little bit more movement in the expired listing. Okay, we talked a little bit about, that was another conversation we had today on how we're going to get our foot in the door. We always zig when everybody else is zagging. So we're not going to say the same thing that the other 20 agents are going to say when they call them. So I think that's kind of giving them the confidence, the tools, the handles to the luggage is really what we talk about.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, like you said, it's a different energy. The not being prepared or the unknown is where that fear really creeps in. So, being committed to put in the work and getting yourself around those, because it's like you said, there's people that all you got to do is ask, right? Asking for help is a superpower. It's something not to be, to shy away from, and not being afraid to ask for help. And there's people that want to role play. They want to role play scripts. They want to role play through the presentation. They want to get those reps in. And so just don't be afraid to reach out and ask for it. And they'll be there to help for sure. So, go ahead, bud.
Mention on that is that, listings are it's a different conversation you have on a listing appointment when you go in and they know you, they like you, and they trust you already, and they see you as the expert. It's just a whole different conversation. And that's really where we all want to be in our career. You find a lot more happier agents that have been in the business a long time because they have those repeat warm leads. People call them because they trust them, they like them, and they want them to come out and give them advice. It's tough when you're new and you're trying to build that rapport, but just understand that it's the two-a-days, man. You're going to get through it. You're going to be catching that pass, in the championship when you're a senior, but you're a freshman. You got to go through the hard times. And the more you do, it might not benefit you right then and there. It might be considered a loss, but then they call you 6 months later and go, hey, I decided I wasn't going to sell my house, and I know you were disappointed, but my brother's now moving to town, and I really liked how you handled yourself. Can you help my brother? Those are the things that you start building that foundation in your database, and that's how we, as long-term agents in the business, are probably a little bit happier than when I started out my first year.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I think, seeing so much, it just takes a couple times, right? You have a couple of those listings pop up around the corner, or people that and it's like, okay, yeah, I got to do something different here. What I'm doing is not working.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any final thoughts as we kind of wrap up to, agents out there, or even team leaders out there with their teams and their agents, of kind of where to keep their mindset, where to keep their focus. Like you said, go deep. Don't spread that, that mental energy and capacity on so many things. But like, what are you saying? Because I know you have a lot of team leaders that you work with, and a lot of just even team members. Like, what's the one message that you're kind of constantly repeating yourself of where to keep their head, where to keep their focus?
Yeah, I always just say, do the right thing and make deposits in people's lives. And they mock me. And if you're not being mocked or mimicked around the office, and they're not making fun of you for saying the same thing over and over, that means you're not doing your job as a leader.
That's right.
But I mean, you have to make deposits in people's lives. And it's nothing different than a relationship with your children or your spouse or whomever else. If you're not giving, how do you expect to get? And I think that that's really where our entire business model has grown from, even with other agents. Like, we literally go to bat and to help many agents that we know that we're going to do a lot of business with, because we want them in return to return the favor when there's 10 offers on the property, and we know we're going to get at least our fair crack at it. So I would say my advice would be, make deposits in people's lives. If you're a team leader, be vulnerable. Don't be scared to be vulnerable in front of your team members. Everybody goes through shit. We all go through it. I mean, unfortunately, with social media, you don't realize it because you only see the best. But be vulnerable with your agents. Understand that they can see you having a bad day, but yet you're marching right along, and then you're having wins and wins and wins. That gives them the confidence to know that they can do the same thing. So those would be the 2 words of advice I'd give you.
That's fantastic. Make sure you guys, get plugged into Andrew's Facebook group, the Neighborhood Mayor. So you can just type that in, the Neighborhood Mayor, on Facebook, and then make sure, if you guys aren't connected or following Andrew and what they're doing, they put out a ton of great content, tons of nuggets, things that can help you in everyday situations within your business, and just a wealth of knowledge and content for you guys to tap into. Brother, I appreciate you a ton. I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. And you mentioned that you guys go live with your team and you put it out there on Zoom. And what I would recommend for any of you guys listening in, if you want to get plugged in, jump into one of Andrew and their organization's training sessions they do every week. Just hit you up. What's the best way to connect with you?
You could probably just text me or Facebook message me. I mean, workplace message me if you're the EXP, but I will give you my number real quick. If you guys want to write it down, it's 937-305-9570, or just Google Andrew Gaydosh and we'll get you in. But just text me, say, hey, send me the link. And then Chris sends out the link to the organization every week. We can get you plugged in, and you can come and go as much as you want. I feel like there's really good content. We've got another thing that I will mention. I know you got to get going, John, but having the ability to add fresh ideas and, for example, today, Boyd Warner is one of our agents in our downline. He's not on our AGA team, but I always encourage everybody to join for our team sessions, because the things that they come up with, they add so much value to what we're saying already. It'd be like having Kitchens on the line, or Gaydosh, or somebody else that's like, hey, what do you think about that, John? What do you think about this, Boyd? There is value in the abundance mentality, and the more you help people, and the more they will help contribute to you guys. I mean, the world has changed for us when we kind of flipped that switch a few years ago, and now we're thinking, hey, we don't have any secrets that we don't want to share. Everything we have, y'all can have. we're going to learn from you as much as we give you in any interaction that we have. So that's been a real positive thing for us. And I would encourage you as a leader on a team to do the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's well said, well put. And definitely you guys are doing some awesome stuff. I have opportunity to jump in with you guys once a month. And so it definitely a fantastic organization, a fantastic crew. And so make sure you guys take advantage of that, jump in. Just a great organization, great team, great leadership. So brother, I appreciate you a ton. And I look forward to seeing you soon, man.
Make sure you wear your green, baby.
I got my green.
All
All right,
guys.
I'll see you guys. See you.